Now let's turn to the United States now. Only 15 days until the presidential election, and it's been a rollercoaster of a campaign, and today was no different. As you might have seen by now, Donald Trump landed himself a job at McDonald's. Here he was working the drive-thru.
I like this job. I think I might come back and do it again.
Thank you.
Never touches the human hand.
Very good.
Nice and full.
Thank you.
Look at that.
Mr.
Look at that. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Nice to see you.
You made it possible for ordinary people like us to meet you.
You're not ordinary.
I mean, thank you so much
You
for
are not
everything you're
ordinary.
doing.
I can see.
We pray for you.
And that was on the outskirts of Philadelphia. Now, he used this stunt to take a swipe at Kamala Harris, and he accused her of lying about working at McDonald's.
I've now worked for 15 minutes more than Kamala.
Are you going to put this on your
I
resume?
never worked here.
Why would she lie about something like that?
Will it be put on your resume?
Worked at McDonald's.
Why would she lie about that?
Why? Because she's lying Kamala, that's why.
Okay, let's bring in Sky News contributor Kosha Gada. Kosha, this has gone viral. Do you think it gives him a leg up? Does it help him be seen as a man of the people in one of the key battleground states?
Yes, I think it helps him in a few ways, Sharri. So one is there is this long tradition of retail politics where you're engaging with small groups of people really one-on-one in a way that has a different power than big rallies and mass media. And that's really fallen by the wayside in recent times. Not everybody has that common touch, as you say, and Trump has always been very good at that. So it sort of reminds people about that, humanizes him. The second is it did allow him to create this media cycle again about did Kamala Harris work at McDonald's or not. The two campaigns have been pointing fingers about that, and there hasn't been evidence either way, but it sort of goes to that point, that allegation he's been making. And the third is it controls the media cycle, because we've got 15 days left. That's 15 media cycles or less. And as you say, this thing has gone viral. It's all anybody's talking about. And then, you know, he knocks one more in the can, and there's just that 13 or 14 more days to go in which he wants to continue to suck up the oxygen with the media.
Well, let's have a look at that, because 2 weeks out, who is ahead? The Fox News latest national survey does have Trump ahead nationally, but then not in the 7 battleground states. So how do you read how the polls are looking at the moment?
So the polls have been tightening more and more, and they're either within the margin of error with him down a couple points or up a couple points, but it's pretty much tied, I would say, at this stage. And all of that bounce and advantage that Kamala Harris enjoyed when Biden stepped aside seems to have settled in a tied race. There's a couple other metrics that we now have beyond the polls since we're so close to the election. That's voter registrations, which is one step towards, since we don't have mandatory voting in the U.S., that's one step towards the act of voting if you took the step to register to vote. And Democrats have historically been really, really strong. They're just much better at turning out the vote in the ground game. And their advantage seems to really be eroding. Republican grassroots organizations have really closed that gap. And then the third thing is early voting is open in a lot of states right now. And again, Democrats really do much better with early voting historically, but Republicans seem to be surging in a lot of the states. So I put those three things together with the polls. It feels like the momentum is definitely in Trump's favor. Election day should typically favor him, and he comes in strong, but 15 days is a lifetime in politics, and anything can happen yet. Bottom line is this race is still very, very tight.
Yeah, and the other point to make, of course, is that in the past, the polls have not properly recognised the Trump vote. You know, there's been this suggestion that people who are going to support Trump don't tell pollsters, and it's why his win against Hillary Clinton was such a shock. Just finally, before you go, CBS has finally addressed the allegations that it edited its interview with Kamala Harris. They say this accusation is false. And they said in a statement that 60 Minutes gave an excerpt of our interview to Face the Nation that used a longer section of her answer than that on 60 Minutes. But a different portion of the response. So basically, Kosha, they're saying that the response they used from Kamala Harris painted her in a more favourable light. And the question remains whether they would have done the same to Donald Trump.
Yes, and I think, all evidence to the contrary, them and every other media outlet splicing and taking things out of context and all of that to either harm a candidate or, in this case, help a candidate is something that happens all the time. What's interesting here, though, is there is precedent with CBS itself to release full unedited transcripts, because the reason that they gave that they needed to edit in order to fit it into the time slot doesn't really make sense, because you can always, in the digital era, release the whole thing separately. They did it with former Attorney General Bill Barr in 2019. They did it with Trump himself in 2020. They did it with the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, just earlier this year. So they have done that. And the fact that they're not doing it here is just raising more questions and putting them into heat that they probably don't need to be in.
Yeah. All right, Kosha Gada, thank you very much for your insights.